Okay, who wants to see how I do a waistband? Anybody? 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 So I'm doing a waistband in this pair of trunks here, and I figured let's do a video on it. This is just a stock pair of trunks out of this aqua material that we got. I think it looked pretty cool. Somebody actually requested this material, so I'm going to make it. And if they want it, great. If not, somebody will buy them. But it's good set to have. This is a pair of large or extra large size wrestling trunks, kind of higher waisted, but we're going to do the waistband in them right now. And I'm going to do the waistband just on the sewing machine because a lot of people don't have a serger. So we can see how we do this. So what you're going to need, your garment, whatever you're using. This is just how I do mine. So there's a number of ways to do it. Whatever works for you works, but this is me. Your elastic. And what I do is let's see, your elastic. I would get 4 clips like this, or pins. Pins work too. I like the clips. Some kind of marker. I'm just using a green highlighter right now. Some kind of marking pencil or chalk. I like just a regular marker. So first thing, we're going to take our elastic. Now I've already stitched this, but we'll measure our elastic, the length we need, and the way I do mine is I'll fold mine over, and with it being stretchy and spandex and elastic, I'll measure it up like this to the length of my garment, and then I'll take about a few inches off of each side. So I probably took 3 or 4 inches off of this because it's going to stretch. So this is a high stretch elastic. So you can measure our elastic, and you'll get a feel for it after you do a couple times. But taking off a couple inches is usually pretty good. And then right here you'll see my stitch isn't the greatest on this one, but I stitched my elastic together. And the way I did that was I butted the ends up together here and just stitched back and forth with a zigzag stitch on that line. So worked out good. My elastic did go a little crooked, but it's not going to make a difference in here. It's got a little imperfection to it, but it'll still be okay. And then what I do, now there's probably a faster way to do this. This is just how I do mine. And with it being stretchy material, I might do a couple different ways you can do this. But then we have our elastic folded. I fold mine again, so that way I've got it in quarters. And then I mark my quarters with my marking pencil here. Boom. So we've got our elastic quartered. Now, if you have a really, really big piece of elastic for whatever reason, so you've got a really, really big waistband, you can do it in eighths or whatever you want to do it in. You can mark it in 6 places. This just makes it even. And then you can do the same thing on here. You can mark if you want. If you're just doing this, just now learning how to do it, I would mark and put the clips. So you're not going to see this anyway. It's going to be folded. You can do it with chalk too if you want, but mark it so you know where it's at. I know where these are because these are where my seams are, so I don't have to mark that. Now we're done with our marking. I put a clip where these 2 spots are so I don't lose my spot. A lot of times I don't mark mine, but then I take my elastic and I figure out where I want my front and back to be. Another reason I mark these is because it gives me a midpoint, because I'm going to put a drawstring in this, so it helps me gauge where I'm going to put my little drawstring holes in box. It's just something I do. But then we figure out where we're going to put our front and back, and we clip our elastic in place at our marks. So that way we know where we're going to stretch everything and this and that, because you're going to have to stretch this elastic out as you're sewing it. We got our other clip here. And there we go. Once you get this down, you can do this in a few minutes. It's not that hard. So now we've got our elastic clipped, and you can see when we stretch it, it'll line up. Now we got our sewing machine here. I'm using white thread on this. Keep in mind what kind of thread colors you're going to have. As you're sewing the elastic in, I'm going to sew mine in and then go back and top stitch it. Keeps it in place really good. I use a wide zigzag stitch. There's a couple stitches you can use. Starting off, I just recommend a good wide zigzag stitch to keep your elastic in place. Give yourself a good length. You don't need anything really tight because you're just holding this in place for now, so you can flip it over and top stitch it. So I do about a 5mm width and about a 3-ish length. That's usually pretty good. And then just pick you a starting point. I make sure my elastic. Another good thing too with the clips is they can help hold stuff down. I make sure my elastic is right alongside my presser foot, and so is the fabric, and it seems to work pretty good. You can line it up more if you want on the edge here, and to where it kind of overlocks it down to where the needle goes over the elastic, back on, over, back on, over, back on. But with the way you're doing this, it's not really going to matter. So it's going to look good either way. And then drop your needle, and then just follow that along. Take the time. Back tack it, so that way it stays in place. And then as you get to where your clips are, just remove your clips. If you have needles, if you use pins, you can sew over top of them if you're brave. I like the clips because it doesn't leave holes in the fabric, and I don't poke myself with the needle. And when you're stitching over top of a pin, you do run the risk of hitting the pin, breaking your needle. So be careful if you decide to do that. I'm using an 1.5" elastic on this because I like a wider, thicker waistband on my stuff, unless it's requested otherwise. I feel like it doesn't roll as much and it holds better. You get some guys that are leaner, smaller, and they want they prefer a thinner waistband, like an 1" elastic, which is fine. But normally I do an 1.5". So okay, so we see we got our stitching there. Our elastic band is stitched in place, and you could probably even make this a little longer stitch. That's just what I like to use. Now, other partner step here. Find our front. We got our front here. So here's this little space right here. That should be our center point. This is just something that I do, which I'll need a marker again. I should have said put it away. You can just punch a hole in this for your elastic, or for your drawstring if you're going to put one in it. Or if you're not going to put one and just use the elastic, that's fine. You can just punch a hole in this. You can sew a buttonhole in this and cut it out. Or you can do it like I'm going to do it. I do a little box. It's just a trademark thing for mine that I like to do because I hate it when the drawstring holes rip out, and this keeps them from ripping out. So I put my settings on here. It's still a zigzag stitch, still the same foot. I draw a little box right like this so I know a line to follow. And I start in the middle, and there's a reason I start in the middle of my box. And I use a 3mm width and like a 0.8, 1 to a 0.8 length, a very narrow and short stitch, because I want this to be really fine, almost like you would a buttonhole. And then we sew our box here. It does take a little bit extra to do this, but I like the result. And an extra couple minutes to do more quality work, I feel is worth it. And the reason I started in the middle of my box is because I put a line that divides them, so that way I can start and stop where that center line is going to be. Trim our threads here. So now we got our little box. See our boxes? Okay. Now you can make this more narrow. You can make it more packed together, better stitching, whatever, but this works for me. And I take my hole punch and I punch a hole where this is going to go. Punch a hole in the boxes. This elastic's like a sport elastic. It's a little thick, so I usually have to cut it and trim it a little bit too. And then I burn mine so it gets rid of any frays and it keeps it from fraying and ripping, and gets rid of any raw edges there. This thing's about to die out. So we got our holes there. So that's for our our drawstring to go through. Okay, so should have enough thread to finish this. Should be fine. Now we're going to top stitch our elastic down. Same zigzag stitch, same foot. I set mine to about a 4.85, and then I like a shorter stitch. I like it to look fine, so I use about a 2mm length, 2.2. Now, when you first do this, I don't do it now because I've just gotten used to it. You can fold it over, take one of your clips or your pins, and line your seams up here, and then I put a clip here and on the other seam over here. And it just keeps everything, pull your elastic up nice and snug so it's folded over right. So you're doing that 1.5 inches. Put a clip. Once you do this a few times, you won't need to do this part really, but if you're just starting to do it, I would recommend it. It'll save you some headache when you're sewing. And it doesn't take long to do it. You can put one in the front and back if you want. So let's do that. This is a kind of beginner, if you've never really done this before, tutorial kind of thing. So we got our little clips there. Hey, this is not necessary if you don't want to, and you're not super worried about it being extremely lined up. I like my seams to be lined up. So, and then find you a starting point. I start on the sides. Line up here where you want your stitch to be. I just put the edge of the elastic and the fabric on the edge of the presser foot a lot of times. Some people drop it down further. Sometimes it depends on the design that I'm using. But both work. And then we stitch. You can use a zigzag stitch, or there's another stitch you can use on this too. It's like a zigzag, but it looks dotted, and that works really well too. I just like a straight zigzag stitch. One of the hard parts and keys of this is You want to keep your elastic pulled, but you want to let the sewing machine do the work. So after you do it a few times, you'll get the handle of it. Pull these clips as you go. Watch these clips because sometimes they'll snag up on your machine and start pulling your fabric. When you get to your seams here, the thicker part, slow down a bit and let the machine go over it nice and slow so that way you don't jump and skip stitches. Once you find your starting point, and go over it and then back stitch. So I'm going to pull these clips out. Don't stab yourself with your scissors. Clean up your stitches here. I hit them with a little heat to close up the threads and burn off any extra threads. Take our clips off here. So we got that. So we got, there's our first stitch. Nice and clean around. I used a white contrasting thread on this just because I liked it. Now, this is optional, but I do recommend it. I do another stitch up here. And the reason I do that, one, it locks the elastic in place more. It gives a channel for your drawstring, and it keeps it from rolling as much when you're wearing it. It gives it some more stability. So you can do it the same way you did your elastic with it like this, or you can flip it inside out and do it the other way. I'm just going to do it the same way. And again, your placement just kind of depends on how you want it to look. I run, like I said, the edge of the presser foot along the edge of the material along the edge of the presser foot, and that usually works really good for a top stitch. So. Back stitch good. Get rid of our extra threads here, pull it in. Okay, so now we have our elastic and waistband done. Not too shabby. You can see that there. Nice clean stitch around, all the way around. Here's on the inside, looks nice and clean. Now the only difference between doing it this way and doing it with a serger is when you use the serger, it'll clean this raw edge up and lock the elastic in place, and it is a little bit faster. The cons though, you risk cutting into this if you're not careful, and once you cut into it, you cannot do that. And if your tension's not right on your serger, because they can be a little trickier, when you go to pull this, there's a likelihood that it could pop. So you got to finagle your settings a bit. The serger I've got, I mainly just use for elastic. That's really it. Or for finishing fraying edges on weird fabric. But most people don't have a serger, so we did it on a sewing machine. So yeah, there we go. We're going to do the leg holes next, so that'd be a whole different thing, but it's pretty much the same process. So, thanks.